So guys, I've had this question on my mind for quite a while already. And the question is this. Let me start off with a question. You can think about it. You can even put your thoughts down while I'm continuing. And the question I have is, how do we live in the aftermath of great and difficult change? The question is, how do we live in the aftermath of great and difficult change? And so that's the question for you. If you have any ideas, please just type it out there. I'll read your answers. I'll come back to it once we're done here. The question then goes, that ties in with this, is how do we carry on after we have gone through a challenging and trying time? How do we carry on? I've gone through this difficult time, this challenging time. How do I then carry on after that? After I've come out of that difficult time, how do I carry on? How do we navigate the new and unfamiliar landscape that the aftermath leaves us in? Because when you go through difficult times and you come out of it, things are different. How do we deal with that difference? How do we deal with the things that we're going through in that aftermath? How do we live in the aftermath of our failures, of our brokenness, of our suffering, of our loss? How do we deal with that? How do we live in that? How do we live in the aftermath of our disappointment and our disillusionments in life? Because we go through disappointments and disillusionments. How do I then deal with that and cope with that and move beyond that? That's what we're going to explore tonight in tonight's session, and then we'll have a conversation afterwards. By the way, aftermath means the consequences or after effects of a significant, unpleasant event. I'll read it again for you. Aftermath means the consequences or after effects of a significant, unpleasant event. So we're talking about that. How do I live in the after effects of a significant, unpleasant event in my life? The sad truth is, in life in general, there are always consequences to the things we go through. Let me give you an example. For example, let's say you've lost a loved one. The consequence or the after effects of that is now the absence of that person's presence in your life. That would be the aftermath. Right now, as a global collective, we are approaching the aftermath of the coronavirus lockdowns. Well, the coronavirus and the lockdowns. That's what we're approaching now. We're entering the aftermath, the after effect of this thing. And we are going to have to, as a human race, we're going to have to navigate the new paths, the new ways that present themselves to us, the new normal, they call it, the new realities. We're going to have to learn to live in this new, in this change. And this has been a difficult time for so many people, but it's during that we have to press on and press out and do different things. The so-called experts have predicted that life as we once know it is gone since the corona pandemic. They're saying things are going to be different. Whether we like it or not, or ready for it or not, things are going to be different. It's forever changed, in fact. We're going to have to live in the reality of that change. That is the aftermath. We have to live in the aftermath of this pandemic. We have to live in the aftermath of the economy. Now, change in general is very scary and uncomfortable, especially when it's painful like this. So the question again, for those that have just tuned in, that we're asking is, how do we live? How do we survive? How do we thrive and get out of the aftermath of great change, difficulty, suffering? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So if you have any ideas, please just comment there. I'll read your comments. I'll go back to it afterwards again, and we'll address some of the things you've said. But for now, I'll just carry on. And we all go through difficult times. We all know that. We all go through difficult times. We all go through loss. We all go through suffering, pain, turmoil of various kinds. We have all had expectations unmet. We've all had hopes being dashed. We've all had dreams that are broken. We've all gone through that. We all go through those things that has the potential to mold us or even destroy us if we let it. So some of us have gone through things that has left a lasting imprint on us for many, many years to come. We've gone through that trying time, and now our life feels like it's fallen to pieces. And now we have to try and pick up those pieces and start again. The question then is, how do we start again? How in the aftermath of my life falling apart do I start again? How do we refocus and change direction if we need to change direction? How do we do that? Well, let's say I've been working towards something or becoming someone for so long, and then that thing falls apart, and that thing is dashed. How then do I live in the aftermath of that experience? Going through struggles is always hard, right? But then afterwards, in the aftermath, things are still hard. You know, people think that once I've come out of the struggle, that everything is just better. No, the aftermath is still difficult. The aftermath is still uncomfortable. It's a place where we are constantly reminded of how things have changed, of what we have lost. That's what the aftermath is. A new path is forced upon us, and that path often feels empty and broken and hopeless. That's what change can bring. That's what difficult change can bring. Now, we're used to the familiar. What we are used to and familiar with is now gone. That's the aftermath. That's what the aftermath does. So the question is, from that disaster? How do I recover from change? Now, I say recover from change because sometimes change can feel quite traumatic. We hate change as human beings most of the time, but it's even though it's incredibly constant, we don't like it. But I've thought about it, and I don't think it's change that bothers us. I think it's the uncertainty that surrounds change. Because remember, when something changes, I no longer am certain. I'm not on sure footing anymore. I think that's what we're scared of. I think that's what we're hesitant to approach and to grab hold of, right? How do I deal with the trauma of that change? How do I start again? These are the questions. Like I've seen Jen has answered already. I won't go through your answer right now, Jen. I'll read it at the end. If you do have your thoughts on this, please put it out there. Tell me what you think about how do we survive? How do we get through and recover from the aftermath of difficult change? Please just type it out there and I'll chat about it at the end. I like this idea. I heard someone once say that change often feels like a building that's on fire, but the building is your life. Your life feels like it's on fire, right? How do we then rebuild our lives after that fire? How do we rebuild our lives from the ash heap? Is there anyone here tonight in that place that can relate to what I'm saying? If that's you, you don't have to answer, but if that's you, just give me like a like there. Then I know you're in this place. You're going through something like that. You're in great and difficult change right now, or you've just come out of it. If you're in that place, this is for you. And hopefully tonight's session will help you and inspire you to move forward. You obviously want to use biblical examples for you. And I'm going to give you a variety of chapters to read. I'm not going to go through them all. I'll give you the highlights of what happened, but I want you to read it at home. Kind of like homework. All right? Anyway, it's found in Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah in the Bible, from chapter 20 onwards. All right? So let's say chapter 20 to about chapter 29. Okay? And basically, what happened in this time was Israel was captured by an enemy. The enemy was called Babylon. Babylon had invaded Israel. They had taken captive to the people. They had sieged the city. They had burnt down the temple. They'd done all these things, and then they'd killed so many of the people that were living there, and then they carried away the remnant back to Babylon. They called it the exile. Now, anyway, what had happened is this happened because God had warned them. He said, look, guys, you're my people, but you're living in sin. You're living in idolatry. In this, you're worshiping other gods. So God had sent his prophets to warn them and said, look, stop doing this. Come back to me. Otherwise, disaster is coming. They didn't believe him. They even killed some prophets. They didn't want to listen. And even had false prophets that said, no, don't worry. That's not going to happen. Anyway, long story short, exactly what God had predicted and had prophesied through his prophets happened. The army from the north, Babylon, came. They attacked Jerusalem, attacked Judah, and then they took them captive and carried them away into exile. I want you to think about this. Here, once a great nation finds themselves living in a foreign land, those that were left. They're speaking a language that they don't understand. They are surrounded by customs that are not their own. They are now surrounded by a God that they're not familiar with. That's where they're at, right? Their temple has been burnt down. Their people have been killed, and only a few of them have survived. They've been taken into this foreign land, and they're in this weird place. They're in this aftermath of the siege. They're in the aftermath of this great moment. What a difficult change. See, Israel went through an incredibly difficult time. Everything they knew was taken away. It was changed. It was difficult. And now they're left in a place they never thought they'd go through. They've become in this, they've gone through this terrible thing they never ever believed they would ever have to endure. But here they were in this terrible place. And that's what happens to us sometimes. Change sometimes forces itself on us, and it affects us and messes us up. and we don't know about it. We're not prepared for it. And like Israel, we are left disorientated. Change can often disorientate. So imagine this. Think about how disorientating that must have been for Israel, for those who were taken captive. Everything they knew is gone. Everything they were used to and familiar with has been changed. Change has come, great and difficult change. They are now in the aftermath. That's what we're talking about. This is so relevant to us because often we go through traumatic change, difficult change we didn't want. And what it does is it forces us to be in a place we didn't want to be in. And now we're left disorientated, like Israel. We find ourselves in a place we didn't prepare for, didn't pray for, didn't plan for, but we're there. We're in this awkward, uncomfortable state like Israel was in. You see how it relates? Again, I must ask this question. How do we live in the aftermath of that great, frustrating, disorientating, and confusing moment of change? That's what I want to talk to you about tonight. I want to focus on just one aspect tonight, and then next week we'll have a part 2. It's a little mini series we've got going on, and then we'll talk about it. But I'm going to give you one essential idea tonight, and then next week we'll talk about another one. Okay? You ready for that? Just give me a thumbs up to tell me that you're ready, and then I'll tell you what the solution is, what the tool is, what the principle is. The answer, by the way, is found in those series of chapters in Jeremiah chapter 29. So before I read that to you, listen to this. From chapter 20 all the way to 28, the Bible is speaking about God warning the Israelites about the coming trouble. He's telling them, change your ways. He's telling all these things through his prophets. Then the siege comes. The capture of Israel comes. The burning of the temple comes. The exile into Babylon happens. Right? Now I recommend you read those chapters for yourself at home. It's Jeremiah 20 to around about 28, beginning of 29. So this is what's happened. Then in the middle of all that trauma, of all that change, of all that struggle, right? God then gives one of the most beautiful and reassuring promises in his word to his people. And you all know it. Jeremiah 29 verses 11. You all know it. You can all say it. If you're not familiar with it, I'll read it to you. And God is speaking to his people who are now in the aftermath of great change, of great difficulty. And he says this to them. He says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope." You all know it. If you're not aware of it, Jeremiah 29:11, it's so beautiful. And this is so important. There's such a powerful revelation I received watching this, is when I was studying for tonight's message, is simply this. Based on what I just read you, is to live in the aftermath of great and difficult change. We need to have a clear and compelling vision for our future. For us to live in the aftermath of great change, great struggle, great difficulty, to survive there, to thrive there, to pass through, we must have a clear and compelling vision for your future. So if I said to you, what is the remedy of the aftermath and making it through the struggles? I'm saying to you, it's having vision for your future. God spoke to Israel in the middle of great difficulty, in the middle of being exiled. And he says to them, despite this, despite where you are right now, I still have a plan. I still have a future for you. Do you see that? God's answer to their current struggle was the promise, the vision of a better future. I find that to be amazing. Vision helps me live beyond where I currently am. Vision helps me to live beyond where I currently am. Vision is so important for our lives. When I have a strong vision for the future, when I have a strong vision that I'm looking towards, working towards, focusing on, then I see the present, the now, as temporary. And I can endure where I am because I know it's not my final destination. You see that? When I have a vision for the future, my now doesn't carry as much weight as it did if I didn't have vision, right? Because when I have a vision, I'm like, okay, where I am now, where I am going That's what I'm working towards. So I can endure the struggle now. I can endure the aftermath now because I have a plan of where I am going. Vision is the key for us to move forward here. Despite my current state, I have faith that this is not where I will remain. That's the power of vision. I read an article by an oncologist who said that in all of their years of experience treating cancer in the patients, they said that people who had vision, who had hope, who had something they were working toward and looking forward to, they said that their treatments and their process of going through chemo, etc., went a lot better than those that didn't have vision and hope. Isn't that incredible? Those that had vision fought harder, maintained a positive attitude even despite the difficult time they were in. They had vision beyond their current. They still planned for their future. A lot of the times I'd get the cancer patients to write vision boards to say, okay, where do you want to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? What are they doing? They're making them forward focus into the future and not focus on where they are now. And that brought hope. And this idea that my future is coming, that's vision, really helps those patients. I've discovered in my personal life that if I don't have vision beyond the now, if I don't have something that I'm looking forward to in the future, then the now, the present, whatever I'm going through, has more power over me. By the way, God-given vision is always beyond the now. Right now, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, whatever your struggle is, we have to have a vision that goes beyond your current situation. Let me read you Jeremiah 29:11. Let me not read it, let me highlight you. Jeremiah 29:11 came at such a crucial time. It came in the midst of great struggle. God gives them vision in the midst of their aftermath. In the midst of the aftermath of great change, God gives them vision. He says, look forward to this. There's something that you're working toward. There's something I want you to look towards. Beyond where you currently are. And by the way, we need the same. Right now, regardless of what's happening, Corona, whatever, wherever you're at, wherever the struggle is, you have to have something in your life, a vision of your life that you're looking forward to, that you're working towards. A successful vision, by the way, doesn't ignore the current struggles. It doesn't ignore the issues that's present. It acknowledges them, but has a strong belief in what is still yet to come. And that's what we need. We need to be people who are actively living in the present, but are looking forward and working towards our future. That's vision. When everything in life seems to be unraveling, we need a golden thread to hold on to. So I call this idea the golden thread of change. Copyright pending, all right? When everything in life seems to be unraveling, when your situation is really bad or the change is really traumatic, that last thread that we hold on to, the golden thread, is the vision of your future state. So that vision of your future state is strong enough to carry us and help us endure even the hardest times. It helps us to push through. It helps us to keep believing that God still has more for you. That, especially when you can't see it, that there's more to come. That where you are now is not where you will be. That's important. Look for that thread. Cultivate that thread for your lives. Now let me share something, a very sad conversation I have quite a lot with many people. And this is what I've realized, by the way, that thought of the future is either filled with despair or filled with hope. And the difference is vision, because vision gives us hope. That's very, very important. A lot of people I speak to that are going through great difficulty or great change, or they find themselves in the aftermath of difficult situations, I'll ask them a question. I'll ask them something like this. I'll say, what is the next step for you? And unfortunately, invariably, they answer and they say to me, I don't know. Or I'll say to them, okay, you're going through this thing, but where are you going? Where is the destination you're planning on going? And they'll say to me, I have no idea. I'm not sure. How much more difficult is life when you don't have a destination that drives you each day? By the way, I'm not talking about goal setting. I'm not talking about goals and goal setting. That's a different topic. I'm talking about vision. Vision is the ability to see further down to a reality you don't yet have, but believe you will get to. That's vision. goals help us achieve visions because we set goals and they become like a landmarks and beacons that we head towards vision. But vision is not goals. They're separate things. If we, for example, were caterpillars in the cocoon, and remember the cocoon's a difficult time for the caterpillar, it's a hard place to be. How we endure the cocoon is knowing or having hope or looking in the future that when I'm out of this, I'm going to be different. That when I'm out of this, I will fly. That is vision beyond the now. And that's what I'm talking to you about tonight. How do we deal with the aftermath? By having vision, clear and concise, compelling vision for your future. I've also learned that when I have clear vision, compelling vision, I can endure almost anything. I can go through difficult times and still be okay because I know it's temporary. I'm going to go because where I'm going is where I'm going. That's where my focus goes. I want to talk to you about Jesus for a second. Jesus went to the cross and suffered and died with great vision. Let me explain. Hebrews 12 verses 2, if you're taking notes today, says this. It says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, who is the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. So it says, put all your focus on Jesus, who's the originator and the perfecter or maturer of your faith. Then it says, for the joy set before him, talking about Jesus, endured the cross. Jesus endured the cross. Why? Because he saw in his future, he had vision that his future would contain great joy, great honor. Do you understand? So he had no problem suffering for us because he said, look at the joy that's coming. He had vision beyond the aftermath, vision within the aftermath. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Jesus had vision beyond the now, beyond the struggle, beyond the change. He knew that beyond the now, that beyond his now was a better future. And I want to say to you today that beyond your now, whatever you're going through is a better future, but you have to cultivate that thread. You have to find the golden thread to hold on to believe in. Here are some penetrating questions for you. I'm almost done. The first question I want to ask you is this. How's your vision? How's your vision? In the midst of change, difficulty, struggle, what image of your life do you see in the future? And that might be a hard question, but what image of your life, of yourself, do you see in the future, even in the midst of great struggle, of great change, in the aftermath? Let me ask you another question. Where are you going? Cool, you are where you are, but where are you going? Where are you headed? Do you know? Can you answer those questions? Despite where you are now, whatever you're going through now, what is your destination point? Do you know that? Has God spoken to your heart about where he is taking you in the future through his word? That's very important, by the way. We need to hear what God has to say about us, about our future, about your life. That word or that promise that he gives you is the anchor. And we need anchor points. When the world is blowing us left and right, pushing us this way and that way, we need to have an anchor point that holds us still. Do you have an anchor? Do we have an anchor? Our anchor, by the way, is found in God's presence. It's hidden in his word, but it's not difficult to find if we are diligent enough to seek it. By the way, let me read you the scripture, Hebrews 11 verses 6. And it says, it's impossible to please God without faith. And anyone who comes or wants to come to him must believe that God exists. Cool, we believe God exists, but also that he rewards those who diligently seek him. Okay? When the waters of your present seem murky, may the vision of your future be crystal clear. When the present difficulties in your life feel like they're closing in on you, may the vision of where you're headed be wide open and boundaryless. When the change that surrounds you brings fear into your heart, may the vision of your future bring overwhelming faith and peace in its place. If you want to cope, not just survive, but thrive and move beyond the aftermath, this is step one out of the two that I'll give you. Just step one is have a compelling and clear vision for your future.